Hi, it's Chris with Implied Music, and this week I want to look at repeated figures. That could be a repeated figure in the bass, maybe in the melody. It could be repeated rhythm whose notes change. And of course, repeated figures can be very powerful. They capture the attention of the audience, they carry us forward in a tune. Plus, if you violate the expectation that that repetition, builds up, you've got a sort of a pretty strong artistic tool to work with. Well, I've got 6 examples of how I might use it. Let's take a look at it. Well, of course, repetition's a powerful contemporary tool for composition, and we can thank any number of composers for that. In the film world, somebody like Philip Glass with the sort of arpeggio thing. But it's also there in boogie woogie bass lines. And on and on and on. Something like, a melodic sequence that descends by scale degree. 2, 5, 1, 6 could be moved around those chords. So 2, 5, 1, 6. I basically played a sequence. You can see that simple phrase kind of descending through the scale, and the motif kind of like appears. It's familiar. Our ear says, "Oh, that's fun. I'm digging that. I recognize what's happening." So for me, repetition is not about strict mechanical repetition, but rather how we can inject the tiny variations that become expressive, that create life in our music. Let's go back and look at my examples. My first example uses a left-hand ostinato, a repeated bass line. Ostinato, it's from the Italian word for stubborn, something that keeps happening over and over again. And it's a triplet figure, like so. And as you can see, these and this and this, there's no third. And the absence of the third is super useful. If we were using a looping pedal, say, and we wanted to create a space that had some flexibility for soloing, we might want to consider using only notes like this that were kind of ambiguous. So we don't know really yet whether it's major or minor or, kind of almost what key we're in. In any case, this simple pattern gives me space. The first thing I'm going to do is say, that's right, major third. And in something like this, the delicate repetition of the melody is wonderful. And then sort of violate that with the minor third. This gives me Satie vibes. The minor to major. Beautiful. So I've got really 2 things going on here in a way. I'm creating a longer arc with a repetitive ostinato in the bass. It's an A-B-A form for this, however long it is. 30 seconds, 40 seconds of music. Let's go on to our next example, because these repeated patterns become really useful for us. I'm going to flip the script. In the next one, the ostinato will be on the top. A great way to outline an odd meter for your audience is to use a repeated figure that has a kind of a note on every one of those. So it's like a frame, those 7 notes. And this is a C minor 7 arpeggio, no bones about it. The bass changes and suddenly we're in major. That major third in the bass, huge impact, right? Each iteration sounds different because a different bass note is present, and that gives us that forward motion that we need. The repetition, but slight changes for everyone. Little coda. Let's go on. So this next example uses what I just generally call in my head an isorhythm. And this is a kind of an old-fashioned composing technique from early Renaissance music where one of the voices in, say, a motet or something had the same rhythm over and over again with perhaps, the notes changing, but we do this tons in rock music and in pop music. You get a repeated rhythmic figure, and the chords may change, but the rhythmic figure stays the same. So the rhythmic figure in this case, easy peasy, and then a sus chord, so we're getting different chords. The bass changes, of course. Little polyrhythm at the end there. Fun, a great way to sort of play around. I mean, and also, if you're a player, it's fun to keep a strict repeated rhythm like that. That rhythm could even cross the bar line and still be really pretty compelling. Let's go on to our next example. Well, I mentioned that boogie woogie piano basses are a classic example of a repeated figure. That chromatic phrase within it, and then to the fifth. So just one chord, in this case it's a F, and then let's go up to G. Practicing something like this is great for piano players. Like when I learned to do this, let's do it in F. So when I learned to do this, I just set my hand to doing it, and I like read a book, had conversations with people, and I just basically tried to get my hand to do this without thinking. So I can talk to you and play at the same time because my right hand has to be able to solo while my left hand is doing that. It's I guess you could say it's muscle memory, but I experience it more like a splitting of my mind, of my attention at some level. I am thinking about the left hand with part of my brain. For you pianists, it comes with repetition. You can do it while you're watching a baseball game. That's how I learned. Let's go on to our next example. Well, I've got a couple more examples for you, but before we go on, I just want to encourage you, if this is the second or third video of mine you've seen, and you're getting something out of the channel, and I certainly hope you are, subscribe to the channel. You might not be subscribed. I know most of my viewers aren't subscribed, and yet subscribers get this material out to more eyeballs, and I'm really interested in building a kind of a community of composers, songwriters, producers who are keen to use music theory, not in an academic way, but in a way that serves their own interests. I mean, I know it's a lot of this stuff, I bet you know already, but this is a time to sit with the ideas, to think about it, to maybe absorb a little bit more vocabulary around something you already know that will empower you in a way to imagine your own music maybe when you're away from the instrument, to think in broader terms about your own conceptions, about your own artistic goals, and about how to achieve them. I hope this is music theory for everyone. Let's go on. Well, I love this kind of thing, this next example. A simple whole step trill whose character changes as the chords change underneath it. It's an A minor, and then the F sharp major. We'd have to call that some kind of E flat, I guess, I don't know. And then an E7. That's like basically a cinematic trick. And that little oscillation, the major second, it could be a third. Third's a little trickier because they managed to suggest harmonies in a way. It could be a half step for a lot more tension. But the chords shifting underneath create a kind of a harmonic landscape, which to me just feels emotional rather than like a chord progression. It feels more like a shifting landscape of feelings. I've got the last example, so let's go forward. Well, this is essentially two repeating concepts, that left hand and then the right hand arpeggio down and up. And I'm going to push the concept through some changing chords in the right hand and a repeated pedal tone in the left. Each moment sounds different, although they're kind of all the same. Making repeated figures work is about the nuances of expression and variation. And those nuances, those subtle changes, the slight differences in volume or in rhythmic timing, or maybe even in note choice like that one, should be in service to your expression, to your artistic message, perhaps to the picture, to the story you're telling, or to the lyric, right? Short, repeated figures are a great way to begin working on your compositional process. In next week's video, we're going to talk about how to expand melodies into longer forms. But do start with short stuff, right? I think almost everybody can write a 3 or 4 note melody that feels satisfying. And as you explore what's satisfying about that short stuff, you'll begin to get intuitive feelings or impulses towards longer forms. And I hope that's what our next video can begin to look at. Well, I hope this was useful. Like and subscribe, ding the bell to be notified when I do my videos, and I'll see you next time.